A common problem that most first years have, most rookies, is identifying people that are buyers and who are not buyers. A lot of times they find themselves wasting hours upon end, spending time with people that just like to talk. Throughout the day we're managing our time. That's all we're doing, is effectively managing our time. And so having said that, we need to prospect better, but also know like who the buyers are, who aren't. Take a look at this clip and try to identify some of the sales cycle that you already know about, but other things that maybe that you wouldn't have noticed before, but now you kind of see it and understand why he ended up getting the success that he wanted out of the opportunity.
She's some kind of newspaper columnist. Comes in there once in a while. Great temper.
What's her drink?
Usually beer. Tonight, Grey Goose Martini, dirty.
Hi. I noticed your glass was getting a little low, so I took the liberty of bringing you another apple martini.
Thank you.
And I couldn't help but notice you look a lot like my next girlfriend.
What's your name?
They call me Chip.
You can't get him to stop?
That was funny.
Listen, Chip, I understand the courage it takes to walk across a room and try to generate a relationship out of thin air, so don't take the following personally.
You have fantastic eyes.
Thanks. Try to listen. But this is no reflection on you. I'm just not interested. But thank you for the compliment of coming over.
You're welcome. So do you like Cuban food?
Chip, seriously, that was not code for I wish you'd try harder.
Are you always so shut down and afraid that the right man might make you feel
Like a natural woman? Sorry I'm late, honey. I couldn't get a cab. How was the meeting?
Oh, well, there was a beginning, a middle, and an end. Nice to meet you, Chip.
You too.
Now, on the one hand, it is very difficult for a man to even speak to someone that looks like you. But on the other hand, should that be your problem?
So life's kind of hard all around.
Well, not if you pay attention. I mean, you're sending all the right signals. No earrings, heels under 2 inches, your hair is pulled back, you're wearing reading glasses with no book, drinking a Grey Goose Martini, which means you had a hell of a week and a beer just wouldn't do it. Because who's going to believe that there's a man out there that could sit down beside a woman he doesn't know and genuinely be interested in who she is, what she does, without his own agenda?
Yeah, I wouldn't even know what that would look like. So what would a guy like that say?
Well, he'd say, my name is Alex Hitchens and I'm a consultant. But she wouldn't be interested in that because she'd probably be just counting the seconds until he left.
Thinking he was like every other guy.
Which life experience has taught her is a virtual certainty. But then he'd ask her name and what she did for a living, and she might blow him off. Or she might say,
I'm Sarah Milas. I run the gossip column at The Standard. And then he'd ask all these penetrating questions about it because he was sincerely, if atypically, interested.
no,
No.
he'd be interested. But he'd see that there was no way he could possibly make her realize that he was for real.
Well, he could be funny and charming and refreshingly original.
Wouldn't help.
Don't you hate it when that happens?
Not really. They both probably go on to lead the lives they were headed toward. And my guess is they'd do just fine. It's a pleasure to have met you, Sarah Milas.
Grey Goose Martini from the gentleman who just left. Ooh, is that for me? What?
It goes through the entire sales process, the prospecting when he asks the bartender what she's drinking, and even going into the initial approach. a lot of times we do the same thing over and over that other reps have said in the past that have talked to a customer before. And so she was talking to the chip guy, and the chip guy was just saying what any other dude would say to try and pick up on a girl. And then Will Smith comes in and says something totally different and goes in a totally different direction. And so we differentiate ourselves from the previous person that stopped by. It's important that we, let them know, hey, it's totally different, because for all you know, it's somebody from another company that stopped by, or it might have been a totally different thing, and they just think that you're doing the same thing. Once you pique interest, and once Will Smith piqued interest in Ava Mendez, she started smiling and kind of answering his buying questions. And so when you get a customer comes outside the door, and they're answering all your qualifying questions. Are you the homeowner? Do you plan on living here for at least another year? You guys have probably talked about this in the past. Why have you? Get them involved in the conversation. And if they're engaged in that conversation, chances are that's a good look, that's a buyer, and you're spending time with the right person. Rather than, talking about a guy who was in the military for hours on end, that's not going to go anywhere. You just have to remember to effectively manage your time throughout the entire day. It's pretty easy to see whether or not they're going to be a buyer or not pretty early. I've noticed that most of the time the non-buyers are the ones that just want to talk forever and aren't really asking the right questions. Like, we all know the right questions that we want to get, like about price, how much is it, how does it work, all of that. And if it never comes up, if those questions never come up, they're probably not really that into it. I'm not saying to walk away from it altogether, but you want to make sure that you control the conversation with the talkers rather than them controlling the conversation. You've got a little bit of time to pique some interest, and if you don't pique it, it's not really going to happen. So anytime somebody's at the window or has a door cracked open, I'll just ask them, hey, do you have a second? Can you come out for a minute? Rather than telling them who I am, what I'm doing, what's in it for them, going through the whole sales process. This is not going to happen through a window. Having callbacks isn't necessarily a bad thing. We tell our guys it's always great to sell one-leggers, but you have wives that just genuinely cannot make a decision without her husband. And I think a lot of times we kind of push and push and push to get those deals, and they end up being cancels because the husband comes home, and even though it might have sounded like he'd be on board with it, and initially he might have been, because it was done without him, and she made it very clear that she really didn't want to do it without him, we end up losing a deal out of it. I like getting 2 or 3 objections, because that to me is a good quality customer, and it kind of leads me in a way that I need to go throughout the sell. So getting objections is awesome. I turn them into questions in my mind, and I just answer the questions and I move on. It's important to recognize that the buyers are the ones that are answering your qualifying questions. If they're answering all these questions correctly, and they're even themselves asking questions, they're on board with it. And you can even throw out there, if I can cover all the equipment and install costs, that all there is the monitoring or the service, can you think of any reason why it wouldn't make sense for you guys here? You never want to ask, hey, is it something that you guys want or feel like you want? But you can ask certain questions that kind of lead to the same outcome. And 9 times out of 10, when I ask them that, can you think of any reason why it wouldn't make sense? If the answer is no, most of the time that's a good transition point to either go into the emergency contacts or transition in to pre-qualify the customer.